list of final departures. More to come. Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, and I don't know. Notice I kind of started out with a tubular with more of a tubular imagery, but I said, why not stay woke? Because that's the threat, right? That's the most imminent threat that we're dealing with. So never mind that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment. And before we get started today, of course, we're going to have a word of thanks for our patrons, of course, a Twitch honor roll, and we're going to have a big thanks to our Texas listeners via the podcast platforms. And of course, we're going to have, I don't know, it's going to seem like a sea or a storm of wickedness and on the local level in SoCal as well as in the classroom. So what can I say? It's a bird, it's a plane, it's racist. That's where we are. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll be right back right after this. This show is brought to you in part by our sponsors. Whether you're interested in health, culture, politics, scripture, automobiles, or music, there's something for everyone. So please check out Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Joseph Francis Burton, Paralysis by Analysis, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, Anthony Scioli, and Let the Truth Be Told. We'll be right back right after this. All right, guys, and thank you so much once again for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And yes, I want to thank you guys so much for those of you that were able to that hung around for the test. The test always has a tendency to go it can go anywhere, anywhere. But hang on just a second. I want to give you a preview of what's going on today on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So for one, I did mention we're going to talk about the final departures, and that we have a list of final departures, that is, and we're going to get into that just a little bit, and then we're going to talk about more of the problem, reaction, solution on so many issues. You can't, everywhere you turn, there's one of these. There's a problem, there's a reaction, and there's a solution. But it seems like they're already in place, conveniently in place. Whether it's legislation or whether it's, you got the stars directing your fate to try to resolve some of these problems, or some of their philanthropists. We'll go there, but before we do that, I want to say hi to everybody in the stream, and I'm also going to we're going to keep going. We have a little bit of a Twitch honor roll, and of course, a big thanks to our Texas listeners. So let me just say hello really quickly, and then we'll run a few more infomercials, and then we'll get started with So I want to say hello to Steve Willis. Good morning, and Anarchy Television. Tyrant Spain TDOA, and Tyrant Spain TDOA coming in right away with a comment. Good morning to you. He says they're using the tragic shooting in Colorado to push gun control in the Senate hearing. They have right now at this minute. I mean, and I think you're on the dime, but I mean, can we not? Here again, did you guys see this coming? Or which TDOA, you're on it like regularly, and I've been not so haven't done so many reports. I've kind of backed away just a little bit, but not intentionally on the 2A. But I think it's a brew. It's a bit of a simmering pot, and yeah, but it's definitely unfortunately a reality that we're dealing with. But I'm not sure what's being done about anything. Here on this channel, I don't exactly have solutions for other than, of course, there's advocacy out there for 2A. Of course, there's I guess you can there's action projects. I don't know. I don't have any action projects to advocate for here. I'm sure you guys can find those, but I don't know. I'm not even sure what's happening at the Capitol. I don't want to. I'll try to verify this, but I think maybe I heard a rumor that maybe some of the wiring is going to come down at the Capitol. I don't know, but something tells me that that's not going to be that place is not going to be like it was before. The I just don't think the accessibility of it would even would resume, or who knows. But thank you for that. That's there you go. What is it that we talked about it last night briefly? Maybe with fast track, we're fast tracking just so many things. The erosion is the fastest track, um, the most consistent track that we've been on. So thank you guys so much, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And I will say this one before we get started: if you guys don't mind hitting the please hit the like button for the health or dissemination of this stream. Yeah, hit the like button, hit the unlike button, make sure you're still subscribed. If you dare to share this thing, then then do that. Yeah, and then this is another note. We're actually winding down, and when I talk about the Twitch honor roll or the Twitch campaign. For those of you that are still on Twitch, I know this has been cumbersome for you to have to make these changes. But the 31st is actually next Wednesday. So if you haven't resolved or found your way to stay connected, not just to me on Black Spring or these programs here, but just for all of the programs that you might, or the subscriptions that you have on Periscope, you might want to do that, because it's going to be shut down next Wednesday. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and take us to our Twitch honor roll, and we'll be right back. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I really appreciate it, and I'll be right back. All right, guys, I thank you so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And good morning to John H. Roberts. Thank you so much for coming over. And John H. Roberts Jr. I'm sorry, John H. Roberts Jr. says I'm going to have Periscope withdrawal. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You'll be. I think you'll be well received. Almost in many places on YouTube, and hopefully this will be one place for you. But I really appreciate you for hanging in there and staying on track with what's going on. So because it's quite an annoying message. Every time I open up Periscope, it says, "Oh yeah, are you going to come over to Twitch or not?" So it's like, it's a countdown for me too. If I don't want to go over to Twitter, if I don't want to move to Twitter, then it's like it's a soft cancel. It's a soft cancel, right? Soft cancel for Black Spring over on Periscope, but that's okay. Who would we be if we didn't have these challenges in this populist society, right? So yeah, but just really quickly, last night got a little bit wild in some ways. But we'll do our cleanup and yeah. So I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you, John H. Roberts Jr. And good morning to everybody over on Periscope, to my friends that are still there. And we have Joseph Francis Burton. And he says, I was just listening to the stream you put up last night. Well, I really appreciate it, Joseph Francis Burton. Thank you for all your support and for coming back again. I mean, yeah, for the lack of a better word, wild. I don't use that very often, but I don't know. It feels right, so I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with that. So, Alien Believer says most of us all are awake. We see their evil plan. They're going to bring America to its knees, and don't see anything changing because there are too many sleeping still. But I just think there's a will at this point. There's a will of people that are not. They don't want to wake up. It's they don't want to. It requires some effort, but I don't think they want to put any into it. So they don't. They feel the lie feels good. There's I mean, dare I say that, but I guess there's some comfort in that. Yeah, it's an inconvenience to have to do better after you learn better, right? I mean, old habits, it's hard to break old habits, or what is it? Old habits die hard. But it's just not possible. And I just want to say this on a wokeness note. The kind of indoctrination, or the kind of brainwash, or the kind of, I'm going to say, the majority of the Black community has been woke for a long time. Now we're talking about we're talking generational wokeness, and I think it's been unleashed. It's new to people that have been outside of that. But I mean, everybody's experience, of course, is different. But the amount of exposure that you've had to this kind of wokeness. Now, the thing about it is many people don't reject it, even if they have friends of all backgrounds. They wouldn't reject it at an earlier age. And now that we're older, it's, dare I say, the peer pressure, or the pressure amongst groups right now, it's even harder. They've made it more impossible, or more inconvenient, because you don't want to be thrown out of your group's friends, do you? Or you don't want to be, do you want to be canceled? Yeah, so there you go. I mean, but yeah, that's that. But so I want to get on with today's program. It's going to be a little bit somewhat commentary on this one, and a little bit informational, but I'm going to share some information with you guys. So, we begin. I talked about this last night. It seems that we're already dealing with some type of campaign. Starting to seem like we're already campaigning for midterms, and even, dare I say, general elections in many ways. And in this case, some call them rhinos, and maybe you can too. I mean, does this sound like an action project that I'm advocating for? I don't know if you want to call your senators, do that. But 2022 is just around the corner. I have to say it really is. So in this case, it looks like we have a list of senators that are taking their final walk or bow. I have a bit of a report on that, and of course, in the positivity on the right, the conservatives, some of them see this as an opportunity to rebuild or to you know to rebuild or replenish. But the force is strong, right? There's a lot of force. There's a lot of power out there. So with that said, um, apparently Senate rhinos are calling it quits. We have Senators Richard Burr, Republican of North Carolina, Rob Portman, Republican of Ohio, Pat Toomey, Republican of Pennsylvania, Dick Shelby, Republican of Alabama, as well as Roy Blunt, a Republican of Missouri, have all announced their retirements. Now we're dealing a major blow to the Republican establishment's inner circle. Now that's according to the Conservatives Fund here. However, the mainstream media believes these departures are a loss for the Republican Party, but they actually create a unique opportunity to replace weak, you may call them weak Republicans next year with strong conservatives who will truly fight for our principles and values. And also, it goes on, it says, in addition to these open seats, there are also vulnerable Democrats on the ballot in Arizona, Georgia, and New Hampshire. However, electing rock solid conservatives in these states won't be easy because guess who? You can guess. It says Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican of Kentucky, and his allies are already working to recruit candidates who will maintain business as usual. So I don't know where you guys are on any of that, but yeah, I certainly think that there's a lot to be desired there, but I don't know what they're going to be able to do. It, they've got still not 2022, but there's a lot to be desired. And I'm saying this is, if we're to be governed, from all walks, we just seem to be, things are just not quite under control. And so yeah, so we just kind of started out with a little bit of a final walk, a final bow. So we'll see if that holds true, and will that open those seats up for 2022? I don't know. I mean, and then replace them with what? Replace them with who? I don't know. You guys throw your names in the hat. I don't mind. Throw them into the stream if you like. And on that note, if you haven't had an opportunity to hit the like button, you'll have an opportunity to do so before the close of this stream. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep going forward here. So I've talked about the temperature, the climate we have, the problem, reaction, solution. That seems to be, even that's Groundhog's Day. But we have, of course, got all these we got environmental justice type things. We've got water issues as far as, south is Mississippi. I've been actually following that on a kind of, just kind of casually following that. But we'll get into some of the lining on that. And then we also will have, we might have a look at what the WE Forum is saying about, of course, the environment. And yesterday, if you guys missed it, it was a World Water Day. I didn't know. I knew it was World Water Day, but nothing like the stars to direct our fate on these things, right? So we'll see which star is co-signing, efforts on that. But it's nonstop. Now I'm wondering, and I don't know if the situation in Mississippi is going to get as much traction as perhaps maybe even the Flint situation. I just don't know. It just, we've been, revving up to where we are. We've been revving up to where we are. So with that said, let's go ahead and start with some wokeness, and we'll get right back to you. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with, I'm going to be doing some screen sharing with you on this segment. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the support. And we will go ahead and we will start with, unfortunately, some wokeness, some thick wokeness for your Tuesday. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And this is coming from slate.com. The headline itself is pretty loaded. It pretty much says it, it kind of sets you up for the bun and lettuce on this is the bun and lettuce always gives us an indication of the slant or the slide on this. So we're just going to just ride with me on this. Hold on. But can you just ride with me on this one? Okay, thank you guys so much for tuning in. So according to this is coming out of slate.com. All right, so according to this article is entitled, How Racist Infrastructure Caused the Jackson, Mississippi Water Crisis. And this was penned, or the pen name is Jason Johnson. And this was released yesterday. How apropos, you got a crisis and you got a water day to celebrate the awareness. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. So here you have pictured, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a student from Jackson State that's actually, maybe it's not, but I'll expound on that later. But this is someone pictured carrying water bottles here. So, and I'll tell you about that. I'll tell you my reference here in a second. So we'll keep going. So you see the imagery here with water bottles. According to this, residents of Mississippi's capital endured weeks this winter without clean running water. A combination of bad weather and failed infrastructure meant thousands of people in the mostly Black city of Jackson spent weeks without the essential resource in February and early March. Residents had to rely on donated water for everyday tasks, while it seems like Jackson's immediate water crisis is getting resolved. Many Black communities in the rural South and elsewhere struggle to get access to clean water every day. It's a complicated problem that doesn't get the same national attention as other racial justice priorities. On Friday's episode of A Word, I spoke with Catherine Coleman. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so here. On Friday's episode of A Word, I spoke with Catherine Coleman Flowers, who is working to change that. She's the author of, quote, Waste, One Woman's Fight Against America's Dirty Secret, and winner of 2020 MacArthur, quote, Genius Grant, end quote. Our conversation has been edited and condensed for clarity. All right. So according to this, Jason Johnson, from Jason Johnson, I presume this is his interview. Jason Johnson, what are some of the issues within infrastructure, communication, and government that led to this happening in Jackson, Mississippi, which is actually a state capital? Catherine Coleman Flowers responds, what's happening in Jackson is not unusual. I believe that what we will find in a lot of areas, especially in the South, is the type of benign neglect of these cities. Benign neglect means there's an intentional avoidance of putting the type of dollars in infrastructure in these Southern communities. It's not coming from the tax base because the tax base is not there. A lot of it comes from the federal government, but it's those cities that have lobbyists or political connections that get the money over and over again. We have to change that paradigm. Okay. One of the things that I've read about Jackson was the mayor was quoted, and he talks about how brittle the pipes were. The infrastructure that was probably put in Jackson was put in there when Jackson was white predominantly. That's predominantly awkward for me on the end there. A little adverb there. It probably has not been replaced, and the local community cannot afford to replace it. But we have to do something about this because Jackson's not the only one. It's like with Flint and the lead problem. Flint was just a canary in the coal mine. There's lead issues throughout the United States that have not been addressed. And likewise, there are infrastructure water issues throughout the United States. When you look at Jackson was also the convergence of poor infrastructure and climate change. We're going to see more climate events, but these extreme weather patterns are going to expose, like CV19 did. All of these disparities as it relates to infrastructure issues. Have you seen climate change make clean water access even harder for rural Black communities? Yes, in California, Allensworth in the Central Valley, because of the water being used by the farming industry there's a Black community that historically was the first Black community in California funded by Black folk. And now they can't drink the water because the water is full of arsenic that's naturally forming. The parts of the arsenic is greater than the parts of the water, so therefore they can't drink it. So when it comes to this kind of activism, we always hear about famous white women. They get movies. We have Silkwood, we've got Erin Brockovich, but we don't hear often about the Black women who are on the ground doing this kind of work. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you saw in Lowndes County, Alabama, and how your activism began on environmental justice issues? Well, my activism began on environmental issues, justice issues, because I came from activist parents. When I moved back to Lowndes County in 2000, I ran into the fact that there were Black people that were being arrested because they could not afford an on-site septic system. A lot of people that are in rural communities are not in incorporated areas. All these laws were written to support municipalities, but in a rural community. Generally, there's no water waste treatment, no decentralized system. I live in Montgomery, Alabama, and we have a decentralized system. And all I have to do when I bought a house was just to move into the house and pay to have my water turned on. Or if I was building a house in Montgomery, it would just connect to the decentralized system. However, in rural communities like Lowndes County, the homeowner is responsible for their own decentralized system. These systems in Lowndes County are very, very expensive, especially if you're a poor family. To give you an example, last year, we were trying to work with a family prior to the CV to get a septic system for them. They built down 25 inches in this case and struck water. The system that she would have needed would have cost $28,000. You don't go to the bank and borrow that, even if it's $6,000 for a septic system. There's no financing for it. A mobile home can come with the plumbing, the indoor plumbing, the toilets. You can connect it to a straight pipe or PVC pipe and have it protruding from the home. When they flush the toilet, it goes out on top of the ground. That's one of the things, and they have criminalized that here in the state of Alabama in a lot of states. Then the second problem is people that have septic systems that have failed. When they fail, they can be criminalized for that. I got involved back in 2002. I had gone to visit a husband and wife who had been arrested because they had a failing septic system. And then later we found out that there were lots of people in the county that either had already been arrested or were facing arrest because they did not have a working septic system. So I got involved by stopping the criminalization, at least in Lowndes County, of poor people who could not afford an on-site sanitation. So it looks like this is kind of a heavy, it's pretty heavy, I think. And I do understand that when you're dealing in rural areas, and I know people that live in rural areas, but somehow I think they manage to, it's kind of like taxes, it's kind of like everything else. You will have to adjust based on where you live in any city, in any county. And I just think that that they've created this ongoing narrative about racism, and that's just what it's about. It's just going to be about the past and how and who was populated, who was the populace in the past versus now. And I don't know if that's even a fair it can't be a fair conclusion on that. I mean, in fact, I know people in these areas and they never complained about it. I don't know of anybody that's been arrested for any of these conditions. I don't know that. But I've actually lived out in rural areas before, but those are some of the inconveniences of people, when they live out. Unfortunately, when you live out, you live with that system. I don't think, I think I think the infrastructure, yes, it needs work, but it's also, it can be sometimes you don't have a choice where you live. And you don't have whether you live in the city or whether you live in a rural area. Some people grow up in these areas and they move out and they never go back because they don't care for the inconveniences there. And for people that cannot move out, that is unfortunate. But I don't think that I would say that that the pipes were those pipes were placed or that they've been just left there. I would say it's probably more mismanagement. I don't think she's talking about. I'm not going to read this entire thing. This is clearly an interview. And to me, this person is to me, she's trying to get her name in the lights. She's already thrown Aaron Brockovich out there. So you're doing these interviews because you really care about what's going on, or you're upset because you're not getting the recognition or the response that you want for your activism. See, this is what I'm talking about. Exploitation. You're exploiting somebody else's plight to either move some agenda or move your own or advance your own career or your own place in activism forward. See, you have to be careful with that, because people have been living in rural places all over the country for decades. And they've all, pipes and home in your home, your pipes need maintenance. And they get old and they get rust and they get, are they going to start doing that with everybody's home? Are they going to start digging around in the last homeowners? Oh, well, I bought this house and it turns out the pipes are crap now. The original owner happened to be white, so these pipes are at this home construction, and this sale was obviously racist. And I'm suffering because, the person that owned this house before me, those pipes were here for a white person. The white person set the standard or the tone for me. So I'm inherently doomed because I purchased a home that was lived in by white people. It's just nonstop. And then you get these articles like this. I mean, okay, great. You're an activist. You want to bring light to situations. Great. But to me, don't frame it. Why would you even frame it that you're not getting recognition for people? Women of color are not getting recognition because they're, because of racism. Are we talking about infrastructure? Or are we talking about you're not getting where you want to be with your activism? I'm just a little bit confused. I know that there are issues in rural areas, but there always have been. Always. And some people, here's the other thing. Some people don't want to move out. There are people that live in rural areas. They don't want to live in the city. They don't want to live in the city. And many of them, they could, if they wanted to move. It's not everybody that's there is not because they're impoverished, because they can't move. That's not the case for everybody. Some people actually made a choice to not move. I mean, we can talk about poverty, but we also have to talk about people don't talk about choices. That they just don't bring that into the argument. And yeah, so, and I will say there are some very poor areas. There are lots of very poor areas in rural parts of Alabama. Yes, there are. There are places that have been that way for years, for decades. And I just don't think that the way she's going at this, I don't know how much that's going to change that. Now, this basically started out talking about Jackson, Mississippi. Now, I will say that I have followed this a little bit from the Jackson, Mississippi perspective, in which some of the college kids, they've been taking water over to nursing homes. They've been doing their due diligence to try to provide pallets of water for quite a few weeks, probably for at least 4 weeks in which I've kind of followed it. But of course, I applaud this woman's efforts, but I just think that everybody wants their piece of this culture shift right now. And to me, or they want to push an agenda, and that's what's going to stick is going to be more of their agenda, and less is going to get done, and their names are going to get into the lights. And then those people will just go back to their rural lives and their rural inconveniences that go with it. So let me just have a little minute here, because I'll probably scan that one and round us out of that one. But Yeah, but if the setup is the same, the bun and the lettuce is the same on this stuff. It's always, I mean, not like, to me, if I buy a used vehicle, are they going to start saying that this racist engine or this racist starter on my car because the previous owner, this car was pre-owned and it was owned by a white person, and now the car is racist, and now the mechanical issues are racist. I mean, do you guys realize how much you can spin this? This thing can just keep spinning out of control. And we have so many more things that we could be concerned about. So yeah, you're going to get two or three birds in for the price of one right now. Okay, so I have some comments here. Ronnie Man's here. Thank you so much, Ronnie Man, for coming in. I really appreciate it. And Joseph Francis Burton says that climate change is also racist. I don't know. Can you guys come up with anything that's not? Anything that's not quite racist. All right. So here we have Joseph Francis Burton, who says, I grew up in a very rural area with no plumbing. We were mostly white and Mexicans and Pueblo natives. It was just life out there. You see what I'm saying? And this is not to devalue awareness on things, but I'm saying these are not new issues. So what is the outrage all about? If somebody's going to jail over water coming out the wrong way, I would imagine that they would, you can get somebody to represent you, or, I just have no idea why the outrage is the volume has been turned up for 2021. Why is the volume turned up so high? I mean, yeah, I know about rural places. Zero the Infinite is here. He says, hey, and greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in, Zero the Infinite. I really appreciate it. So we're just looking at just a little bit of the woke storm. And yeah, we're just looking at a little bit of the woke storm on your Tuesday. So we'll probably round this one out. But yeah, so it looks like she's bringing, this was framed that this is a Jackson, Mississippi water crisis, racial injustice in Black communities. So it's kind of a lot. It's more of an interview, and I will place this in the stream for you guys if you guys want to go through this a little bit more. This does give you a little bit of insight on the state management of these resources. Lowndes County, I'm familiar with Lowndes County. I know that there's a high level of poverty in Lowndes County and in the education system. And that's what it's been. I can attest to that from personal knowledge. Did I become an advocate for any of these areas? No. I haven't been an advocate for environmental justice anywhere. No, but I'm not upset because Erin Brockovich did, and she got something. She managed to get something done, in one place. One person can make a difference, but in this case, I don't know how many people she's reaching with this right now. But here's the other thing I notice, and I've talked about this before, when it comes to civic literacy and people's active and people playing a role in it. You do have these issues, but you also have the same people that live in these areas. They don't go to their council meetings either. They don't go to their school board meetings. They don't go to council meetings when they're talking about infrastructure. They don't go there to discuss what projects that they have on board. They don't go there to voice things. I think there's times where you can go into a council meeting, you put something on the list, bring something to the front that you think is not getting attention, but that's also not happening either. I find that to be, these things happen across the board. There's a lot of complaining, but you don't go to the source. You go to a newspaper or you complain about it amongst yourselves and it doesn't get resolved. So we're going to round that one out. She talks about Jeff Sessions in here on some level, but okay. So I'm just going to round this one out just a second, where it kind of talks about, I guess, some of the leadership, if you will, or on the state level and the federal level. See, this is, to me, what I see this as is, this is a federal cry for, this is an outcry for federal money. And this is, in a constrained society, to me, it's almost a former society that we were in. They don't really, I don't think that was even designated in, it's not a part of, that's not a constitutional provision that they actually honor. So it makes sense. It's actually more of a state issue. They expect the states to handle emergencies. FEMA is something that is, FEMA is not really, I would imagine FEMA was probably a program that was created out of, out of maybe even the 60s. I'm not sure how long FEMA has been around, but I think that many of these issues are outside of what the federal government normally deals with. So their response to it is just as delayed, because it wasn't set up for the federal government to handle state issues that are more legally dealt with in the state. Okay, so according to this, and we're going to round this one out, but this is more stuff. Be woke, or make a difference, but I'm not sure. I just think that this is, I can't say that, there's been no racial issues in the Deep South. That would be a lie. But the approach to it, I think that's where it gets a little bit off. Okay, so according to this, it would seem to me also that in this structural issue, because as Black folk, we're segregated or kept out of certain neighborhoods in certain places in the South. They weren't able to live in places that were incorporated, that had plumbing systems. So you're not only being punished through white supremacy and segregation, forcing you out, but you're then being fined and criminalized again when you have to provide resources for yourself that other people aren't getting through tax money. Yes, Montgomery at one point was one of the top slave trading places in the country. That is why the Lynching Memorial, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, is located in Montgomery. When you walk from the river in Montgomery and walk down Commerce Street, those buildings, a lot of them were slave holding pens. People were auctioned off at Court Square, which is not far from the Rosa Parks Museum. Those of us that are a part of that heritage, our families ended up in places like Lowndes County. When I go back and look at the census records, I see that our families have been there since the early 1800s in some cases. So these rural communities, there's a legacy and traditions. There's a legacy and traditions where there are churches and schools and graveyards where people have been there forever. But when infrastructure came in, I think there was neglect of these communities. And the communities that were left out were those communities of color. That is a major problem that we see in the South around infrastructure and environmental justice. Okay. So yes, and she's probably right on the dime. She's right. I'm sure she's right on the dime when you look at the actual records, or if you go to the courthouse in many of these places. But I also know people that I know many of those people that have actually, maybe they grew up there, but people have moved out of those areas. So I don't know who the leadership is in Lowndes County. It's probably not very good. And I would imagine there is a ton of neglect there. But what my problem is when I see people that when the Black community tends to pick their leaders, or it appears that they've chosen leaders, they don't do anything either. So nothing's really getting done. Nothing's getting done. And those people are, I'm not convinced that there's a ton of generations that are still living in those areas. I'm not. Some are, some aren't. There's quite a few. I think there's quite a few mobile homes in the area. There's a lot of, you could do some farming there in those areas. But I do think that many people chose to stay there. I know people that have chosen to stay there. So I think that, she's taking the worst cases and bringing those to the table. But where are the other people in the town? Are they not speaking up? What are they doing? It's usually not going to be one person that's going to make all the difference in a situation like that. You have to go to your council meetings. You have to go to your school board meetings, or otherwise you're just going to keep complaining amongst yourselves and nothing's going to get done. Yeah, but I don't want to get, I can tell you some stories about some of those areas, but like I said, I didn't live there. If you visit there, you see some of the challenges, but the people never seem to be downtrodden. They didn't seem unhappy. They didn't seem sad. They didn't look like they were, depressed about. Those are some of the happiest people that I know that lived in these areas that she's describing. And there's actually good people that, a lot of good people that come out of these areas. So I'm just thinking this is a little bit of a slant. I think it's slant, and I'm not sure how her approach is going to make it any better. Shout out to her for making the effort, but I just let's hope that it's more about solutions and not just about her getting her name, her 15 minutes of fame. We'll go with that. All right, guys, I really appreciate it. That was a long time on that, but that's some of the wokeness. And we all know plenty of history about the South. We know about, if you're familiar with the South, if you're familiar with the cradle of Confederacy, you know that there were huge levels of discrimination, huge levels of at the time, there were more examples of racism that you had actual empirical evidence for. But because you can't get your name in as the first Black Aaron Brockovich, that's just not going to pass with me. It's not. Help the people, help them help themselves, help them be advocates, but don't just whine about where you're not getting. You're not getting what you want out of these people's plight. That's what I don't like to hear. And I see that in these situations more often than not. Zero to Infinite says, stay woke. What did they wake up from? That's a good point. All right. Zero to Infinite says FEMA started on April 1st, 1979. So there you go. See? Yeah, FEMA has been around what? 42 years? Almost 42 years. So the 42nd anniversary, I guess, will be on April 1st this year. So those pipes are older than FEMA. And I'm going to tell you, you've had sheriffs, you've got police officers, you do have Black people that are in civic leadership. They have civic leadership roles in those areas. So, and you've also had, I'm not sure who the mayor is of that town. I'm not sure who it is, but like I said, I haven't met anybody from that area that was just that's going through any of that, nor they didn't live life is just not good because of all the things. Have they felt inconvenienced over the years? Yes. And was I inconvenienced when I visited those places? Yes. But was I going to go out and slip my wrist over it? No. I made a choice to go there and visit. And when I got done, I left. So there you go. Good luck on that. So we'll continue to follow that. I mean, we want everything to be right with the world, but we cannot just keep spinning out of control with all of this, with every single thing that's known to man that a white person may have touched or led being the problem. We just can't keep that up. It's just way too exhausting. It's a turnoff. It's a turnoff. And how much longer can it last? How much longer? And Ronnie Man says FEMA was established on April Fool's Day. Ronnie Man, count on you. Count on Ronnie Man. Thank you so much, Ronnie Man, for coming in and for sharing that April Fools. I didn't even associate April Fools right away with April 1st right away. But thanks so much. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that story. I'm very familiar with some of these areas. I'm familiar with some of the businesses. I'm very familiar with people that live in some of these areas. And like I said, some of these people, I don't know of anybody that has had that's been arrested. I don't know. It would be nice if they had cited who's been arrested, what were they arrested for. Um, Even in the city, even in a city where you have that you can connect or transfer water, you still have water issues. Even in the cities, in a city that's, in a county, in the county area that's not far out, in places in Alabama, you still have plumbing issues. You still do. So I'm going to get off about that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And it is March 23rd. So we're going to move on to another story. Thank you guys so much for coming in, but we're going to go to a little bit of a break. And we'll be right back. This show is brought to you in part by our sponsors. Whether you're interested in health, culture, politics, scripture, automobiles, or music, there's something for everyone. So please check out Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Joseph Francis Burton, Paralysis by Analysis, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, Anthony Scioli, and Let the Truth Be Told. We'll be right back right after this. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So we're going to take just a mini break. We're just going to have just going to give you just a couple of lines from short lines from the We Forum. And of course, there's nothing like stars directing our fate. And apparently star Matt Damon has thrown his hat into the ring on World Water Day World Water Day. That was yesterday if you missed it. So yes, World Water Day. So we're just going to have a really quick look at the We Forum and what's actually, what's being projected for the world on the world stage in terms of water. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen with you guys here. Okay, so we're going to do just a brief on this one. So according to this is from the weforum.org, their agenda 2021. The truly incalculable, that's a fully loaded word, impact of getting water to all. Matt Damon talks to Radio Davos, party of Davos. So you notice how close these stars, they somehow end up close to politics all the time. And then some people refer to Davos as the party of Davos. So he's talking to the party of Davos, or the talking heads of Davos. According to this is yesterday was World Water Day, and it was marked on 22nd of March every year since 1993. Worldwide, 2.2 billion people live without access to safe water. Matt Damon and Gary White tell Radio Davos about their charity, water.org. So here you go. You got a reaction here. You already got a reaction for Water Day, World Water Day. According to him, growing up in the affluent U.S., Matt Damon was able to dream big. He and his schoolmate Ben Affleck headed to New York to become actors. But what if his childhood had been spent walking miles every day to fetch water for his family? There would have been little time for ambitions or even basic education. Those are the people Damon is trying to reach with the charities that he co-founded with engineer Gary White of water.org and Water Equity, which help which help people in 13 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America to build the basic infrastructure they need to get clean water and sanitation. Quote, you've got 1 million children dying of entirely preventable things every year, like diarrhea, which is a ridiculous idea to those of us in the West whose kids might miss a day of school from something like that, end quote. Damon told the World Economic Forum's podcast, Radio Davos, in an interview to mark World Water Day. Quote, the actual impact of access to water is incalculable, end quote. So I'm going to let you guys read this incalculable or get this transcript from Damon and White if you're interested in their World Water Day. So, yeah, I'm just thinking, well, also I figure, well, is he doing anything here in the States? We have world water issues here, right? But see, there again, even in just that, he talks about, he's comparing Africa and the US. A kid misses a day from school in America, yet in Africa, you get diarrhea and all these other problems. Well, does he really need to go all the way? Do we really need to go all the way to Africa, or can you resolve some problems here? I just don't know how these people pick how do they choose their outrage? I just don't. They want you to ignore everything that history says, but go with their agenda. So I'm going to drop that for you. Thank you guys so much. I want to read a comment here because we're going to go on to, unfortunately, another woke it. Another first one offended wins out of the university. We have one professor, of course, who loses his job. And we also have somebody out of San Fran, the school board VP, talks of Asians guilty of white supremacist thinking, and they use it to get ahead. So Rachel Van Ziel's here. Thank you so much, Rachel. I'm going to read your comment in just 1 second here. I really appreciate it. Let's see. I have one comment here. Oh, I do for Ronnie Mann first. Awesome Alice is here. Thanks so much, Awesome Alice, for coming in. And Ronnie Mann says BSWA could live stream her music playlist, and I would definitely tune in. Do I actually have a playlist? My playlist would probably make no sense. It would make no sense. Hello, DJ Vision Barnett. And so I put that in there for you. But Rachel Van Ziel says, Born Identity seeks to educate us. Get her a barf bag. All right. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you haven't had a chance to hit that unlike button or share the stream out, you will have an opportunity to do so. I know all this wokeness is making you guys a little green, but we're going to move through it as quickly as possible. Thank you guys so much. So looks like we're gonna go into the elite den, or the elite snake pit. Awesome Alice says, seems that all these rich folks love to experiment with Africa. That's very, very interesting. Interesting observation there. So yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our next woke story. And it's going to be, unfortunately, we're going to go to a New York Post line in which a Cincinnati professor, John Uecker, loses his job over a Chinese virus email. All right, we're going to go there. And then we're going to have spring break inside of this stream. So thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for you guys coming in. Thank you guys so much for coming in last night, which was kind of wild. We got some things in for sure. So yes, there's a slew of things that are coming out, and I'm not even going into all of them because they're just at a point when you've seen one woke story, you've seen them all, right? Okay, how much more woke can we be? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen with you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And thank you guys so much for those of you that may be on Twitch or if you're over on Periscope. All right. So according to the New York Post, it looks like we have a Cincinnati professor who called the CV-19 the Chinese virus, loses job. All right. So that's actually coming out today. So how many professors now? That's when this is where cannibalism, when they start eating your own, eating yourself. Okay. The University of Cincinnati did not renew the professor's contract. Okay. According to this, University of Cincinnati professor who referred to the CV-19 as the quote Chinese virus, end quote, in an email to a student will not be back at the college next semester, according to a report. The contract of John L. Uker, an adjunct instructor from the university's College of Engineering and Applied Science, will not be renewed following the September email he sent to a student who said he needed to miss a lab due to possible exposure to the virus, the Cincinnati Enquirer reported Monday. Quote, for students testing positive for the Chinese virus, I will give no grade, end quote. The email from Uker's university account read, quote, you can read the info I sent to the class RE torsion test, end quote. Uker was put on administrative leave with pay one day after an engineering student, Evan Saltzing, posted the email on Twitter, where it reportedly racked up nearly 2,000 interactions. The 20-year-old junior told WKRC at the time that he wanted a, quote, sincere apology from Uker, adding that he was shocked, quote, anyone in power, end quote, would use such divisive language. The university's dean of engineering and applied sciences referred the matter to its Office of Equal Opportunity and Access while denouncing the, quote, xenophobic, end quote, message. Quote, we can better protect and care for all we speak about CV-19 with both accuracy and empathy, something we should all strive for, end quote, Dean John Widener wrote the Enquirer in September. Widener announced in November that Uker would remain out of classrooms for at least the remainder of the fall semester. Quote, as an isolated reference, the term, quote, Chinese virus did not meet the threshold to be designated harassment, end quote, Widener said in a statement. Quote, however, it did represent poor judgment, caused offense to members of our community, and distracted from the learning environment, end quote. Uker, who had taught at the university since 1996, had been offered an adjunct position in its engineering college effective from late August through mid-December. He was paid $3,600, records cited by the Enquirer show. A university spokesperson said Friday that Uker's contract as an adjunct instructor had not been renewed. He could not be reached for comment Monday, the newspaper reported. The university's president, meanwhile, called for an end to, quote, hate and violence, end quote, targeting Asian Americans last week, one day after gunman Robert Aaron Long, 21, killed 6 women of Asian descent and 2 other people. This is so gross. The 2 other people, okay, at Atlanta area massage parlors. Investigators in Atlanta have said there is no evidence so far that the massacre was motivated by racial hate. Quote, as a nation, we must do more to abolish bigotry and protect and celebrate difference, end quote, University President Neville Pinto said. Quote, as a campus community, we must show our strength and unity by standing with our Asian American students, faculty, staff, and alumni to renounce all forms of hate and violence. All right, so there you go. Another one bites the dust, right? This is... See, the thing about this is the offense really that egregious? You're going to make someone unemployed over this. It's just so gross. I can't even, I just, because the thing about being an adjunct, first of all, an adjunct professor doesn't make a ton of money. The adjunct professors are contract. They're almost independent contractors. They get their courses or their loads in many cases based on how many classes there are available for them to teach. And that's how how many students actually register for those courses. If enough students don't register for the courses that they are eligible or that they're signed up to teach, that class gets dropped. And that hence the instructor's salary goes down. Clearly he wasn't making a ton of money. But he deserves to lose his job. I mean, this is it's beyond petty. It's beyond pesky. I just don't know where we're going with this. I'm not, there's no adjunct grocery store for this professor. this adjunct professor. There isn't. So are the activists going to go out and help the people that have been canceled, or you're willing to impoverish somebody, add to the statistics by being woke? Wokeness to fight. Wokeness is going to impoverish people. I don't know what this is. It's a clown world. Clown world. Clown show. But see, the same thing is that we need to be empathy. Why not give the guy a warning? You see what I mean? This is all extreme. We need to celebrate differences. We need to, but it's just more than, it's just clownery. Clownery. And just anybody, nobody's safe from this situation. I'm surprised they're not doing some type of sensitivity training everywhere. What is it, Coca-Cola? Awesome Alice says more like a freak show. I'm just gonna read this comment from Awesome Alice. She says, I went to school for massage therapist and I had to quit. They wanted me to rub in special places like the cheeks of the seat, and some people's feet I'm not touching, but they told us a lot of people think it's about sex. Thank you, Awesome Alice, for sharing that with us. Interesting. I don't know. Could you reserve the right to refuse service, or no, I don't want to do that. That's not my domain. I'll do something else. So let me go backwards a little bit here. But I'm just saying, but historically we've tended to refer to viruses based on their origin, right? So we can't even agree on the origin of a virus, but we can agree on racism, right? We can agree on that, but we can't agree on on a place on the map that we can put our finger on, or that we can find the latitude and the longitude for. But it's just way too much wokeness. All right, so I'm going to keep going here. I've got some great comments, and good afternoon once again to Rachel Van Ziel. And yes, spring break. We're going to talk just a little bit about spring break. Yay. Joseph Francis Burton says, I have eaten snakes. I will have to be mighty hungry before I eat one again. All right. And Joseph Francis Burton says, quote, China virus equals racist, quote, UK variant, end quote, equals following the science. Thank you for that logical perspective. Awesome Alice says, this is how you know China is in control of America. Canceled for pointing out where the virus origin came from. So I guess the Wu flu been a better name. Ronnie Mann says Spanish flu. Ronnie Mann says West Nile virus. DJ Vision says still fighting the intellectuals. Rachel Van Ziel says Hong Kong flu, Nile virus. And Awesome Alice says, see how they deflect, the man was a sex addict and he wanted a really happy ending. All right. And just a couple more here and then we'll keep going. I'm telling you, this wokeness stuff is really exhausting. I don't want to do too much. We can't have another Tuesday like this. Okay. And Joseph Francis Burton says, I remember the Mexican Zika virus a few years back. Yes. Hell, I didn't care. I remember that too. And nobody went bananas about it, right? It's control, it's just control. Ronnie Mann says, better not eat this French toast. Ooh. Okay, we're going to keep going here. I really appreciate you guys. So I'm going to have a little bit of a break, and we're going to give a couple of thanks to our patrons, as well as we're just going to keep this Twitch honor roll going. All right, guys, we'll be right back. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So, what we're going to do now, we will just have just a quick departure from that amount of wickedness, which we're going to have a look at. Looks like a spring break kind of going, kind of going south. I mean, I guess literally going south. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and hello to the Lockhart Perspective. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. And thanks to the friends over on Twitch and those remaining over on Periscope. I really appreciate it. So if you haven't had a chance to hit that like, unlike, share, or subscribe or unsubscribe, do what speaks to you. Let us know how you feel around here. We really appreciate it. So with that said, we're going to take you guys over to, we're going to go over to the situation from the Washington Post, which involves the Miami Beach police firing pepper balls into the spring break crowd. So I hope you guys are doing well out there. I really appreciate you guys for coming in. And I just keep saying this. I really appreciate you guys for staying up, for those of you that came in last night, because that was pretty late. And it was a test. It was a test. And maybe it was more of a test for me before it was over. It certainly was. And so we're going to we've actually got a follow-up story as well. It's also an imposition of curfew for crowds and the chaos and the spring break, paradise, whatnot. I don't know, you guys have had spring break. I mean, technically I'm on spring break, but I've been on both sides of the spring break coin before, but I always kind of came out under the radar. Spring break was always expensive to me. Yeah, I'm just saying, I think that's privilege, right? What do you guys think? What do you think about privilege when you're talking about spring break? Everybody, so are they going to have a spring break fund for the wokeness? For the wokeness, we're going to have a spring break fund for everybody who really can't afford to do spring break trips. I don't know. We're woke, right? Why not? But I mean, who wants to do this anyway? Who wants to party like that anyway? All right, so what you have on your screen is coming out of the Washington Post. And apparently you may have heard about this, but apparently the Miami Beach police fire pepper balls into the spring break crowd. All right, so the police used pepper spray, pepper balls on a crowd gathered in Miami Beach on March 12th after a teenager allegedly pushed an officer during an attempt to clear the gathering. Okay. I'm not sure why that's like that, but I guess I'll click on it. Okay, so it's a little bit of imagery here for you, apparently. All right, so there you had some imagery on the spring breakisms, and so what I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick follow up on that also, which something tells me we haven't heard the last of that, and in fact, I've even heard of there's some leaders coming out speaking out about what happened there. But what we're going to do is we'll go right on over to our follow-up story on that, in which I do believe some curfews have been put in place to, I guess, try to calm things down. I don't know. Is it? Can you say spring fever anymore, or is that racist, or what do you guys think? All right. So this is coming out of the Washington Post. Our follow up here. All right. So according to this is out of our New York Post. New York Post. Went from Washington Post to New York Post. According to this, Miami Beach imposes curfew as crowds chaos overwhelm spring break paradise. So according to this, the curfew will be in effect for at least 72 hours. According to this imagery, according to the Miami Beach officials, highways in and out of the city will also shut down overnight. Miami Beach is cracking down on spring break as unprecedented crowds overwhelm the sunny seaside party time paradise. The city imposed an 8 p.m. curfew and declared a state of emergency in its busy entertainment district to combat mounting chaos, according to reports. Quote, I think the volume is clearly more than it's been in previous years, and that I think is in part due to the fact that there are very few places open elsewhere in the country, end quote. Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber told Reuters. The curfew will be in effect for at least 72 hours, according to the Miami Beach officials. Highways in and out of the city will also shut down overnight. The crowds are so bad, quote, you couldn't see pavement. You couldn't see grass, end quote. The interim city manager, Raul Aguila said. Okay, so here's, I guess, another angle of, party town. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that button. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I will probably put these into the stream for you later so you can see how the parties are going. All right, you can see. I don't know if you guys are of the MTV generation, but it kind of looks like they're doing what they want to do. I don't know, but here's the thing: you do what you do what you want to do, and then there's consequences, right? But or maybe not. So we'll see. So that's your spring break. That's your spring break palette cleanser there. Just want to go through the stream and do a little bit of comments. I thank you guys so much for tuning in. And thank you, Ronnie Man. Ronnie Man is keeping the Twitch drive real. And Rachel Vansdale says, instead of having good fun, they're simply off the hook down there. And Awesome Alice says, DJ is a special job. It really does help people. But I just couldn't touch certain parts of the podcast. So we're back in the massage parlor. We're back in the massage therapy world. Nice that we have a massage therapist in the house. Thank you, Awesome Alice. You're good. We're glad to have you here. All right, so I'm going to keep going here. So according to Joseph Francis Burton, no, we did not have spring break when I was in public school. We just had a day off for Good Friday. And Joseph goes on to say the times have changed since the 70s. And Awesome Alice also says that reminds me of Mayfest we have in Augusta, GA. This is what happens when you lock folks down and they get free for the first time in a while. See, they got to burn off all that energy and what do they used to call it? Maybe I'm being old school by calling it spring fever. People want to wear less clothing. Da 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 da. You guys know the drill. People take a few more risks, right? And they have been not locked down. They've been locked down. They've been pinned down, pent up. So they just had to go down here and, say they're having the time of their life. Go on to Hotwire or something I don't know. Spring break means different things for everybody. Everybody does spring break differently. And some people don't do spring break at all. They just want to break. Okay. And Austin Alice says they had over 100 arrests, 100 of arrest. And Austin Alice says, I want my MTV. I remember when MTV was about the music. Yeah. And even those MTV Spring Break, the footage back then, I thought those were kind of luxury. I'm like, wow, you can go to these places. What was it? Cancun was a place. Panama City. Panama City was a big deal. Uh, Panama City, and then what's just about any time you go to any of these cities around spring break, it's hard to get if you don't get your room. If you don't book your room, like it used to be, you had to book your room like like a year to year calendar. You had to book it on a calendar cycle because I don't think you could get a place within so many miles, or it was actually ended up being cheaper to be so far to be within a certain radius because you could get your room for less money. Um, but yeah, that's amusement parks were kind of a fun thing to do. I mean, I remember here I'm going into anecdotal. I remember we had the band. We went on a little Panama City trip once upon a time, and yeah. So of course, when I got older, oh, this is the place that was the place people go for spring break. So yeah, there you go. But Rachel Van Ziel says, now I've got that song in my head at Alice. DJ Vision says, looks like the Black Burning Man Fest. And DJ says, 80 guns found. All right, thank you for that. And Awesome Alice says, the old girl's gone wild. People were wild. Yeah, it's MTV was a little bit different, back during when they would. I don't even know what they do on MTV anymore. I don't watch MTV. I don't watch Real World or any of that stuff anymore. I mean, I'm probably telling my age right about now, but I think Austin Alice might be picking up what I'm putting down, picking up the nostalgia that I'm putting down in here in these times. Rachel Van Ziel says they always showed white crowds. MTV Spring Break, this one Florida is showing is switched. There you go. You guys sound like you're ready for a spring break. Don't try to hide it. Don't fight it in the chat. You guys know you want it. You're itching for a spring break. It's like, well, first of all, you got to be able to get your parent to rent a car, or you got to go through that conversation, right? All right. So I really appreciate it. So we're going to move on to some of our final lines and final digs, it seems. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So we're gonna go back into some wokeness, and this time it's gonna come out of our friends over at the JBS. I'm gonna read a few comments before we go back into the final wokeness. And I don't know, check your local listings for the wokeness in the school district near you or your own child's school. Okay, or either your school board. It's so funny. It seems like there's a big spotlight on the school boards, but school boards are not a new. You see what I mean? All this outrage and all these kinds of things. Go run for some of these offices, or go down and see. Go just attend a meeting and see what actually goes on, or go to a council meeting and try to preempt, the takeover of your street, or tell them you want to put that speed bump back. Put that speed bump back near the cul-de-sac, because people are just zipping up and zipping down. Do what you have to do. All right, so here we go. Austin Alice says, well, reminds me of the Black Biker Weeks I've been to, but they didn't call the pool like this. Joseph Francis Burton says, yeah, I think spring break became a thing in the 80s. I remember seeing those Girls Gone Wild VHS tapes. Come on. I remember those. Oh my gosh, Joseph Francis Burton. Yeah, you're on to something with that one. Yeah, I used to get sick of seeing those. Sick of those. There were just tons of them. Tons of Girls Gone Wild. And I don't know where they were recording those from. I really don't. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to our final line on today. I appreciate you guys for coming in. And we're going to have a line from our friends over at the JBS. I'll be right back. This segment of our show is brought to you by our good friends at the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. The JBS is a constitutional and educational organization that's been around for over 60 years, dedicated to upholding and defending the Constitution and working to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this country. The JBS does not endorse any political party or candidates. Rather, it focuses on the education, training, and development of the American voters. All right, guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. So for our final woke story today, it is coming from our friends over at the JBS. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. And yes, I look forward to seeing you guys around later in the week. It is just Tuesday, but the wokeness will continue. Just make sure you find out where you want to be, that you book your place, book your rightful place in the wokeness. All right. So what we have here, of course, we're coming out of San Francisco. This comes from the TNA. It's written by Selwyn Duke, San Fran School Board VP. Asians guilty of white supremacist thinking. Use it to get ahead. All right. So, you got to subscribe to their definitions of everything, right? You got to be, or they'll use it against you. You can't win, right? You can't. So I'm going to give you guys some full scale here. And this is our final one for today. Thank you for holding on in this ride of wokeness. All right. So according to this, she ought to talk to the Chinese. We just learned that Beijing has an uncomplimentary name for white, quote, woke, in quote, liberals. Batzuo. Now, a prime example of the species is learning that, quote, woke, in quote, is no joke. San Francisco School Board Vice President Allison Collins is being considered or condemned by other wokesters for having said that Americans of Asian descent, quote, use white supremacist thinking to assimilate and get ahead, end quote. The city's mayor, London Breed, yeah, that's a name made for politics, and other leftist public officials are calling on Collins to resign over her comments, which were made via Twitter in 2016. CBS San Francisco reported on the story Sunday. Collins wrote the tweets, in her words, to combat anti-Black racism in the Asian community. She wrote, quote, many Asian Americans believe they benefit from the model minority BS. Many Asian Americans, teachers, students, and parents actively promote these myths. They use white supremacist thinking to assimilate and get ahead, end quote. Quote, talk to many Lowell High School parents, and you will hear praise of tiger moms and disparagement of Black/brown culture, end quote. She continued, quote, where are the vocal Asians speaking up against Trump? Don't Asian Americans know they are on his list as well? Do they think they won't be deported, profiled, beaten? Yikes. CBS reports that as of Saturday evening, Collins had not removed the tweets and that she's complaining they've been misconstrued. Quote, a number of tweets and social media posts I made in 2016 have recently been highlighted, she said in a statement, end quote. CBS also informs, quote, they have been taken out of context, both of that specific moment and the nuance of the conversation that took place. I acknowledge that right now, in this moment, my words taken out of context can be causing more pain for those who are already suffering. For the pain my words may have caused, I am sorry, and I apologize unreservedly, end quote. We'll see if this saves her, but, quote, nuance, unquote, is never considered when conservatives get canceled. Interestingly, though, Collins is right about Americans of Asian descent using white supremacist thinking to get ahead. That is, if you accept the left's definition of, quote, white supremacist, end quote. Consider, for example, that diversity consultant Glenn Singleton, quote, has said the label, quote, intellectual and task-oriented are associated with, quote, white talk, while color commentary is personal and emotional, end quote, the College Fix report reported last week. Quote, he also said blacks as a people are loud, end quote. It gets even worse, however, as occurred at Sandia National Laboratories. Anti-white social engineers may claim that, quote, rugged individualism, quote, a can-do attitude, end quote, hard work, end quote, and, quote, striving towards success, end quote, reflect, quote, white male culture, end quote, which leads to, quote, lowered quality of life at work and at home, reduced life expectancy, unproductive relationships, and high stress, end quote. Punctuality is also said to be a, quote, white norm, end quote. In other words, Collins was just distilling fellow leftist woke ideology that Asian descent Americans are just like white people, only more so, down into tweet form. Note here that Singleton, who makes millions heading up the school curricular propaganda outfit Pacific Education Group, has actually said that Asian descent Americans are a, quote, majority, end quote, group because of their, quote, white, end quote, habits. They're honorary white people, I guess. That is, except when voting. And that 63% of Asian descent Americans voted for Joe Biden brings us to part of the reason Collins is castigated. She criticized a group in the Democrat coalition, which is somewhat fragile and must be kept intact for the left to maintain and increase its power. In fact, Asian descendant Americans are the, quote, rainbow coalition, end quote, group most likely to secede from the Democrat plantation. After all, liberals in, quote, higher education, end quote, boys, is that ever an oxymoron, use quotas to discriminate against Asian descent Americans and whites in favor of blacks and Hispanics. This is no doubt a reason we're hearing the big lie that the recent Georgia massage parlor shootings perpetrated by a deranged young man upset by his, quote, sex addiction, end quote, or, quote, racist, end quote, racist acts reflective of white supremacy as leftists bloviate about combating anti-Asian, quote, hate crimes, end quote. Were they serious about this, they might point out that the vast majority of such crimes are committed against Asian descent Americans by other minorities, notably blacks. But voicing this reality could help shatter the Democrat coalition. So instead, they warn, quote, stay with us, Asian Americans, despite your white habits, or the white supremacist boogeyman will get you. The principle is simple. When you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bourgeois. All right, guys, if that wasn't loaded enough for you, got your daily dosage of wokeness. I was happy to provide it for you here. And there's a couple of comments here, and then I'm going to be saying salute to everybody in the chat and wishing you guys a great, it's a Tuesday. Okay, so we have Ronnie Mann says wokeness. Rachel Van Ziel says teaching not to be white. Awesome Alice says funny how they think being smart, hardworking, want to be straight students is whiteness. I thought that was being productive. Okay, and Rachel Van Ziel says good work ethics out the window. Ronnie Mann says white habits, honorary white people. What on the planet Earth is going on here with this article? But it takes, unfortunately, these things, I think they kind of take you there. They just kind of take you to places that you never thought you would go, just your thoughts. It just becomes, you just turn into a head case, right? And Rachel says, it sounds like the road to public assistance. No good workers allowed. Fair point, Rachel Van Ziel. So I thank you guys, as always, for tuning in to Black Spring with Autumn. And I hope the wokeness, hope you've learned your lesson. But then I talked about this the other day. These are the theories of, these are theories that were born out of, to me, the 60s. That's my assertion about this. I talked about the Frankfurt schools before, and most of the isms of today and the theories of today, it came from those times. Columbia University, even to the West Coast, you had these it was kind of a group of, ended up being a group of German professors. Actually, they ended up coming on a bit of somewhat of an assistantship, and then they ended up taking over these sociology departments. So that's where you ended up with your critical theories. You ended up with your Latino studies, your Chicano studies. You ended up with your African American studies. You ended up with your feminism. You ended up with ism, ideology. You ended up with all of this stuff because they could not imagine people in America being happy or having values. So that's a whole nother show, a whole nother philosophy, a whole nother theory. And you can go back into the archives and deal and pick around, play around with that. Plenty of room to play around with that. But yes, so now it's like on steroids, take a bow, Frankfurt schools. You've officially made America miserable. And I've said that before, because I think they're teaching people to be miserable. And it's only a matter of time before these groups start, attacking each other. You have BLM, ALM now. What else is next? What, Disabled Lives Matter? Come on. I'm saying it's like we're literally, there's some kind of campaign, some strategies going on here. And not to mention the voter base. I'm not going to touch that on this segment. I won't. However, Joseph Francis Burton says, wait, I thought white people got what they have through inherent privilege. Now they are punctual and productive. Thank you very much. Thank you for being our voice, an extra voice of logic and reason in our stream, Joseph Francis Burton. And you do it very succinct. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. So I just want to say hi to everybody in the stream, and then we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Steve Willis kicked us off early. Thank you so much, Steve Willis and Anarchy Television. Tyrant Spain TDOA, thank you so much for coming in. Alien Believers and John H. Roberts. I say the comment of the day, John H. Roberts says, I'm going to have Periscope withdrawal. I don't think you will. You won't have Periscope withdrawal here. And Joseph Francis Burton, thank you so much for all you do to support the channel. And thank you for contributing to our chat. Ronnie Mann, thank you for being a gold stripe in our chat and delivering great commentary and all the hard work that you do. I appreciate it. And Zero the Infinite's here. Thank you so much. And Zero the Infinite says, stay woke. What did they wake up from? They're spinning. All right. Thank you so much, DJ Vision Barnett, for coming in. I really appreciate it. Rachel Van Ziel. And who else do we have? I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anybody in this one. The Lockhart Perspective. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. So yes, if you haven't had a chance to hit the like button, you've got just a few minutes as we're going to close this one out. I'm just going to put this in here. Austin Malice says, when you can't see racism, these wokesters have to become actually racist to prove how racist they really are. He said eugenics, anthropology are alive and well with this crap. And Ronnie Mann has given us a definition, wokedness, as a noun. He's offering it as a noun, the state of being woked. Woked or woked. And I don't know. I don't know I'm not quite sure if I'm clear on the pink starburst pink starburst matter. There you go. There you go. So if you're right, what else? What else? What else can you give us? We got pink starburst. All right, I really appreciate that. So thank you guys so much. And yes, I will be putting a question on the community tab, and you can email your responses if you choose to participate in that. Of course, it's not required. It's just another opportunity to, it's something that I wanted to include in the streams. So I like to get your guys' thoughts sometimes. And sometimes, it can be more challenging, a different exercise or a different vintage to think on your feet. So that might be interested to hear from you guys on your own in your own space in your own time. So if you're interested, there will be a question on the community tab this week. And if you would like to respond, I'm going to ask you to respond to it via the email. And in that, if you want your comment read with your name, just if you give that permission inside of the if you'll give that permission inside of your response, just say something simple. You have permission to use or you have permission to read my response to the question. And so, yeah, just look for it there. I'll try to get it up there today. And then that'll be something that we'll continue to do. But I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And Rachel Van Ziel, she says, I love strawberry starburst. I know. Have they always had strawberry? I think maybe I'm confusing the strawberry with the pink lemonade. And maybe I'm not being sensitive enough to the pink starburst. But please don't cancel me. Just don't cancel me, whatever you do. All right, guys. So I thank you for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. On this All right, guys. Well, you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday. And of course, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next live stream, in the comments section, on a video, another test. Last night's test was pretty wild. And I appreciate you guys for participating. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I'll see you guys around next live stream in the comments section, a video, a moonlight stream, or a test. Have a great day.